Привет всем! Welcome to this new build of the Rifles model JLTV Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. If you have not seen the review, I encourage you to do so. That's part one in this video series. Quite a good kit, that's what I'm going to say in summary. I'm going to show you how to build this kit in a modular form. Again, as I say in most of my videos, move away from the instructions, regard them more as part location diagrams, and try and simplify the steps that will help you and aid you in the construction and painting of the model. In this example, of course, we've got an interior that we have to deal with, and therefore the painting needs to be done in a sequence of steps. The basic construction of the kit is quite straightforward actually. The interior is not as detailed as their very well detailed M1240. I think mainly because there's a lack of references to this very new vehicle. As we know, the replacement for the legendary Humvee used by the United States military, United States Army, United States Marine Corps. The cab structure is a large single piece molding that helps, of course, in the alignment of the build, makes things simple. There is a bit of interior detail to add inside the cab. Watch out with the placement of these parts. This is the first diversion. The actual instructions indicate that you build the doors right at the very end of the build. Why do so? If you're going to be painting the cab interior, you want to have the doors, etc. ready. Also, you want to check out the fits, make sure everything goes together. There is a fret of photo etch brass, not too much, but don't be too intimidated by the parts. Most of the parts are actually the gunner's platform inside the interior and also some racks for radio communication equipment. However, the actual radio communication equipment is entirely absent from the kit. I use a photo etch bender here in order to form the parts. Also, I anneal the parts. It makes the bends much more easier to form. This is the gunner's platform being constructed here, and you'll see in a minute that this actually is designed totally to fit and incorporate with the plastic parts. Use super glue to attach them to the interior at this stage, and also there's some other structure that gets added on in situ. Also, you can use a pair of pliers, a very handy tool for forming photo etch. And there you can see the radio rack tray being positioned. This was the more difficult construction. And this might seem a little bit intimidating. All the harnesses for the seats are supplied as photo etch parts. However, they do add very nice detail. There aren't any alternative plastic parts. I suppose you could use tape if you're not too keen on using these, but in all honesty, it's not too difficult. There is location parts for fitting the photo etch. Now in this case, we're using grey surface primer in order to prime the interior of the cab. The reason I'm doing so is that the actual plastic parts are sand in colour, and therefore a primer helps you to see where you're laying down paint. Using grey primer as well is going to be it's going to make it easier to lay down the base colours for the interior. Now using some black interior surfacer, I'm painting the interior portion of the armoured glazing parts. The reason being, I don't want to see any bare plastic or strange coloured plastic within the recesses of the armoured glass. The cleared parts are really good. They have got a thickness to them to depict this armoured glass. Now, if you get this kit, I really recommend you get a masking set. It just makes things so much easier. And in this case, I've got a set by CARC Models that actually includes window tinting and also mirrors, as we're going to see later on. At this point, I separated off the transparent parts and I used a Sharpie here to add in more of a black line, a surround, maybe a sealant, so we don't see any clear or any plastic in between those window frames. The parts are now masked. I fitted in the glazing using a non-fogging super glue. Now we're going to spray in the CARC Tan colour. Use your own blend. If you want to know more about this build, in particular the colours, if you want to know more about the sequencing in more detail, join me on Patreon, and I have tailored videos on there answering your questions. We have Zoom meetups, and it is a pleasure to see new builders and experienced builders joining our community. Now with this painting, of course we painted the doors. We also painted the outside of the armoured cab. As you're going to see, I am using a method of building up modules here. In this part here, I'm painting in what looks like tread plate. These should be rubber mats inside the vehicle, so I painted them this black using the primer. And there was a single radio as well that's fitted to the back headrest of the seats. Now it's time to detail paint using a brush the harnesses for the seats. Again, there was a lack of references, so I used references from an M1240. Didn't use any metallic colours, instead using the silver grey to depict the metallics of the seat belts. Now I masked off what would be the rubber mat for the interior of the vehicle, and then reapplied the sand colour in order to get a sharp demarcation. This is a supplied 3D printed part, which I believe is a driver's night vision equipment or cameras. Not really too sure. However, it's a nice detailed part. At this point here, we can start fitting together the actual interior. And also I decided to apply a very light layer of a satin or a gloss varnish to help us in application of the water stickers, and also it's going to help us in the weathering steps. These water stickers really nicely add detail to the interior of the portion. Modern vehicle, all 3D touch screens that are provided, digital battlefield type stuff, and as you can see there, not a bad looking interior, although it is a bit sparse. In terms of weathering, we're going to continue this theme throughout using enamels, and I make up my own mixtures. I found this grey brown enamel wash a quite complementary colour to the theme of this vehicle. As you can see, not a heavy wash. We're just imparting in the we're adding detail at this stage, you're outlining the details, also showing that the vehicle is used. So this is well, they call it a filter technique. As you can see, we're not just totally lining, but we're applying that enamel paint overall, all over the interior of the vehicle to add detail. These are the rubber seals for the doors, hand painting exercise, didn't take too long, adds enough detail. There you can see the effect of the black liner that I used in the armoured glazing. And here is the tinting film. This tinting film gets applied like it's full-size tinting film. All you need to do is lay down a little bit of dishwater soap or detergent soap in order to adhere the film to the transparent parts. It lays down okay, but it does sort of have some air bubbles, has some issues, but overall I do like the effect of giving it the armoured glass type appearance. Now at this stage we can assemble the cab, and this is the first part of assembling the suspension components. This is a bit that I think is okay, it's very well illustrated in the instructions, however there are some unusual quips. There's some areas where they suggest melting plastic pins to make them steerable, to make the suspension components workable. Believe me, it is a waste of time because the suspension can only sit in one configuration, as it's basically determined by the damper height, and unless you adjust that, you can't have any flexibility in the suspension components. The instructions suggest you building up everything as 1 or 2 units, 1 unit for the front, 1 for the back. That can make things very difficult. I'll come back to that later. Now, in the meantime, I was waiting for those parts to set, so I built up other subcomponents. This, again, a large piece of photo etch, really creates great detail for the grille. Note the Oshkosh logo as well. They obviously haven't got licensing issues, this manufacturer. And this is pretty straightforward. This is the rear load bed component. There's a alternative part for a top if you wish. And here is the support structure that rolls around the top of the load bed. This is an excellent part, a really excellent part. And another subcomponent being the winch and bumper. There's a couple of options on this, but I went for this long bumper bar. And here we are, the gunner's top mount. This part is warped, as you can see. Now the solution here is to cement it on one part, let it cure fully, and then just using your fingers, cement the other part using a bit of pressure, holding it in place. The part will form. It is not a biggie. There's some PE detail that gets added in, and again, it's pretty nice. Let's get back to the suspension. This is the way I suggest that you build it together. Instead of the 2 parts being joined together, I put them in situ, then I join them. First the front components and then the rear ones, as you can see here. Join them at this step here, then you should have good alignment. This is the most crucial part. This underbody armor component locks everything together. So I suggest plan your build carefully so that you can get everything lined up in one go. Apply a bit of pressure onto that underbody plate there, hold it in place, and then you've got a very firm, excellent construction. Everything's lined up, no problems. At this stage now, we've got the basic modules that I was saying. So we've moved away from the manual, the instruction leaflet, in that we've got subcomponents for priming and painting, which of course is what we're going to do next. This is the one upgrade solution that I purchased for the kit, some 3D printed wheels. These turned out to be excellent, not only having really great detail, but as you're going to see later on, the fit is amazing. These were primed again using the Mr. Surfacer Black, and also it serves as a pretty good base color in all honesty. I tried to shade in the grill portion as well using this black, hoping I could preserve it, but that all got overpainted anyways in the sand color. Moving away from the paint instructions as well, I decided to paint the entire bumper bar using the Mr. Surfacer primer. There you can see the excellent tread detail on these 3D printed wheel and tire package. 50 caliber gets its base paint again using the primer. This is the spare. The spare is only the kit part. These are a little bit difficult. The photo etched support brackets for the side steps, I added them on later on because I was concerned I might lose them, I might get them damaged, so I added them on later on after that box module was all formed together. Okay, now let's paint up the subcomponents. As I said, instead of painting the vehicle as a whole, I found it really easy just to paint these all as individual components. Particularly this load bed here. This has got quite a few different areas that you need to get into. And also I'm just applying the corrections there as well. I lost a bit of footage. The suspension components should be black in color. Let's detail out the lights here using a paint pen to provide a rear reflector portion. And then of course, like I said, I needed to go back and hand paint in or brush paint in the grille. The painting instructions are absent from the kit itself. However, you can download them. Check my review. I've got a link to the actual paint instructions and of course the water sticker placement instructions. There's not too many water stickers, but the ones that are provided look to be accurate according to references that I found. There were 2 markings provided, however I went for the tan vehicle, a US Army vehicle, I believe. However, there's not really much information given on those on that PDF download. There you can see the grille being painted out, and I painted in all the lighting separately, made sure I gave them a surround or else they can look pretty odd. So use a fine brush and paint the surrounds using black. You can see this as well on the tail lights. And these get fitted in. Now, the reflectors themselves are actually photo etch parts that get added on, so there isn't clear parts. So these need to be painted. I used a base coat of a bright orange and then a very small drop of crystal orange in order to depict those reflectors. Just a bit of detail painting now. The 50 caliber rounds for the 50 caliber heavy machine gun. And now we can add basically more and more details as we go towards constructing the model up. So what I found was fit excellent, no real problems whatsoever, and that's why I was able to build this kit or paint the kit in these little modules. These wheel arch inserts, I thought that they might be a little bit difficult to fit. It turns out they actually press fit into position. I didn't need to use any glue whatsoever. You could if you wish. There's very small mounting points for the rear load bed, and you could see that I used super glue there to initially mount it on, and then using a bit of pressure I found that there was a much better purchase here at the rear. So just wick in some liquid cement to make sure you've got a strong bond. The concern there of course is that you may lose that load bed because there's very small areas of contact. And again, the rear fender inserts again snap into place, no need for any glue. This is the exhaust which runs exterior of course to the armor plate. Be very careful with the fitting of the winch and bumper bar. It is offset at an angle, yeah, it doesn't get placed in between the mounts, it gets set off at an angle. There's actually, be very careful, look at the instructions and you won't go wrong, or you'll get confused about it. This is the armored glass. Again, I had masks for this, so these get unmasked at this point. I used a little bit of license here, choosing a black surround, and again these get fixed using the non-fogging super glue to fix them in position. And I like this effect more, having the armored glass with a black surround and a tan coloured gunner's mount. Just giving these a light clean now in preparation for, again, more of the tinting film. The tinting film that I used fitted perfectly nearly everywhere except for the gunner shield. On the gunner shield, the tinting film was too big, so I didn't use it on those parts of the glazing. Let's construct the 50 cal mount now. This fits perfectly, and you'll see in a minute that the actual ammo box, incredibly, the rounds fit within the receiver for the 50 cal. No need to actually glue it together. And final detail points, again, must point out, these are not included, these are extras that I purchased, but self-adhesive chrome mirror which fits perfectly on these mirror parts, really complements the build. Some kits include these, but this one did not. The mirrors can get mounted to the doors now at this stage. Really nice effect. These are side steps. I found it easier to clip off the pins, and then I found I could actually press fit them into position. You'll see that they're movable at this stage. However, they need to be firmly cemented into position. Further details getting added. This is a latch for the bonnet or front engine cover. Give these a bit of a clean up, and here's these little chains that are obviously very small details. Optional, I suppose, if you find that sort of stuff intimidating. And here we are, everything base coated and individually prepared. These are the smaller details. We'll come back to them later on. And at this point, I noticed on all references, the tan coloured vehicles seem to have the bolts either in a natural metal or a black. I couldn't really tell. In this case, I went for a mixture of black and dark grey. This detail, I was a little bit unsure about doing it, but the references indicated this. Of course, you need to use a fine brush. Yes, you do make mistakes, come back and correct them. And I wasn't too sure how this was going to turn out, because as you can see, in detail painting, I could only paint the face of the bolts. I could not paint the surrounds of the bolts as per the actual vehicle. So this, it took a little while to do, not too difficult. An option maybe for yourselves. I noticed that the green vehicles did not have this. Now we make up a weathering wash solution using enamels, a bit of black and brown to create this dark wash. Obviously what we're going to do here is pin wash in or wash in the details, detail highlighting of the components. In particular, all these bolts as well. My idea here, or what I hoped for, was that this wash would actually add some darkness to the surrounds of the bolts, the face that I couldn't paint really. But it's sort of 50-50 result on that. You guys be the judge. See if you think it was worth painting all those bolts. As usual, we're adding in depth. We're adding in a highlight of the details using this dark wash. An important point here is, this is a brush here. This is enamel wash just on the brush, and what I'm doing is cleaning and blending away the wash just from the outside. Where it looks a little bit messy, where the wash is too concentrated, don't be shy to go in with your brush and sort of blend it out a little bit. This sort of remove any of these sort of tide marks, areas where it looks a bit too concentrated. And also you see later on that you get a nice filtered effect overall. With this effect, of course, as well, as I mentioned, we are just highlighting details. It's not an overall wash, not like what we did in the cab. And again, here you can see a little bit overdone in these portions. So using an enamel wash and also a cotton bud or Q-tip, just blending out the wash, toning it down a little bit. Do not forget all of your little sub-assemblies and details. So here we are at this stage. This is the pin wash completed, and also a little bit of highlighting as well was applied with a lighter colour. Let's go back to the wheel and tyre pack. I thought I needed to differentiate really the rubber portion, so I'm using black brown here. Add some Liquitex flow medium here, makes the painting really much easier with these paints. Using quite a large brush, I think a number 3 or 4, not particularly accurate. You can see I'm being quite messy there. This is one of the few scratch built details that was not included within the kit. This is, of course, the winch itself, the hook that would be on the winch. There is no such detail, so I fabricated my own using a spare part and some wire. The references indicated bright yellow for the hook itself, and that was superglued in position. This is the whip aerial that's supplied in the kit. I thought it was just a little bit too thick, so I scaled it down using some carbon fiber rod. Of course, had to adapt the mount there by gluing it out, by reaming it out or drilling it out, and then of course fixing in the carbon fiber rod using some super glue. Now again, we use this grey-brown mix, very dilute mixture. This is a repeat of what we did on the interior, and this is the so-called filter technique. What could we also say about this? All we're doing is basically overpainting the entire vehicle using this very, very dilute mixture. So we're just going to impart the idea that the thing is actually being used. It's not entirely factory fresh. It's been driven around. It's got a bit of dust and dirt on it, but not heavy. Don't go looking for excuses for your weathering. Sometimes it's better to go a little bit lighter. Not in all cases, not in all subjects, but why not vary your weathering? Why not make vehicles look a little bit different from time to time? So in this case, a little bit of light wear, a bit of light dusting effects, not overly weathered, yeah? And seen this far too many times, people chasing, looking for chipping, looking for this, looking for that. Go sometimes with what you see in your pictures and you might just be surprised. Classical technique, Tamiya flat earth, or Boff as well. Didn't show this too well, but this is getting airbrushed underneath into the suspension components and also on that underbody armour plate. Classic dust technique, really easy using the airbrush. Hit the front as well, obviously, and the rear of the vehicle where dust would accumulate. And this is a pre-dusting, so just trying to hit the outer face with this dust solution. And this is what I call the tide mark effect. Have a look at real vehicles, have a look at how dust accumulates on vehicles. It doesn't go everywhere, it seems to sort of go up and then settle on the lower components, so simply airbrush that on. As I said, these 3D printed wheels, amazing. They fit without glue, they have a perfect fit because they're totally compatible with the plastic parts. Adding in the final details now, because obviously we're doing less and less handling. That rear wheel gets mounted, the spare wheel. And this part as well, absolutely superb fit. Adding in another IED aerial on top. And I'm leaving the hatch as well, just loose fit. Not too sure. Is there a diorama coming? Do you guys want to see a diorama with this vehicle? Answer in the comments. At this stage, I thought, yes, a quite lightly weathered vehicle, but I definitely thought that the tyre wear treads, the treads of the vehicle and the wheels themselves could definitely use a little bit more highlighting, a bit more sort of sandy sort of effect. So that's what I did. Now these again supplied within the kit. These are obviously the masks for the wipers. If you want a very, very subtle effect, just simply overspray matte varnish. That's all that's required. If you go in using the buff of the sand, you get a much stronger effect. But as you see here, as I lift up the masks, very, very subtle. As I've said, that is the theme for this vehicle. It's a brand new piece of equipment. The doors as well, dry fit in place at this stage because I'm not too sure how I may pose them in the future, opened or otherwise. There is an alternative hatch provided, but of course we've gone with the 50 cal mount. And with that, I think our build's concluded. Thanks again.